Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Health Mastery for Leaders. I'm so grateful to have you here because the truth is that sugar cravings and sugar in your life are causing such a challenge, and you don't even realize it. Today, I am speaking with Dr. Lorraine Mayada, and I'm so grateful to have her here because she's going to speak about hormone health in a different way that you're not used to hearing speak about it, right? So, she is here and she is going to do an amazing job to get you guys back in check all about hormones. So, Lorraine, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you here.
I'm so grateful to be here because we have to get the word out that people need to take care of themselves holistically, and that could totally transform their lives. This is what really rocks my boat. This is what makes me excited. I get up every day and I get to see people transform. So all you listeners out there, I want to help you transform too.
Yeah, so good. And right before we hit record, I just want to say, like, Dr. Maeda and myself are both working on programs to teach you how to become your own doctor in your own way and advocate for yourself. So let me talk a little bit about Dr. Maeda. She is an MD and she's called the Hormone Harmonizer and Detoxifier. She specializes in helping you ditch weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, mood swings, and hormone havoc to have boundless energy, stable moods, a lean body, a sharp, clear mind, and balanced hormones so you can feel like yourself again. Like to me, like when I read that, it just like excites me. She's going to help you understand how your lifestyle choices impact your mind and body so you can choose what makes you feel great again. As a triple board certified and award winning physician, writer, author, and speaker, her own struggles with hormone imbalance prompted her to become board certified in anti aging, regenerative, and functional medicine and advanced endocrinology. Her programs alone have impacted over 120,000 participants in each of three Fortune 100 companies where she served as the chief medical officer or medical director of global health services, as well as thousands in her private practice. Her patients call her a miracle worker, a revolutionary doctor, a warm, caring medical professional who listens, really listened, and is extremely smart. Words cannot express how grateful I am to Dr. Maeda for turning my life around, feeling now 20 years younger. As the CEO and founder of the Feel Good Again Institute, Vibrance for Life, and How to Live Longer, she has been featured in ABC News, Forbes, WOR Radio, and many media outlets to spread the word that you can live younger, healthier at any age. Aging is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I love that. Be good to yourself and get the support you need to feel good again at the Feel Good Again Institute. So, she is going to dive right in today on balancing hormones, easing stress, the path to vitality. So, Dr. Maeda, talk to us a little bit about many people think that stress is only about worry and the mind, but is that what stress is, or is there more to it?
There's definitely more to it. And, I have people come in and say, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. And then I test their cortisol level and it's either sky high or it's bottomed out or it's bouncing all over the place. And cortisol, I call it the major ager. Actually, I can't take credit for that. I think it was Dr. Oz that took credit for that. But it could be the major ager. And when cortisol is off, everything else is off. So stress, your brain can't just it only has certain ways of reacting, right? Thousands of insults, but only a few ways of reacting, and it's going to change your hormone system, your immune system, your nervous system. So stress can be any distress that the body senses, like your brain is like a big antenna collecting information. So it could be physical, like pain, heat, cold, restless legs. It could be chemical, toxins, hormone imbalances, nutritional excess, nutritional deficiencies, or it can be emotional. So stress, worry, anxiety, depression, and some of those are chemical imbalances as well as hormonal imbalances and just stress as we know it. So it could be physical, emotional, or chemical. Your body is going to react the same way, pour out adrenaline, and that will stimulate cortisol, and then the whole cascade begins.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And I always tell patients, like, sometimes they don't even realize when I call it the cortisol shuffle, and they're stuck in that. And we've patterned in ourselves that we don't even realize, like, some of the day-to-day pieces in life that we're actually doing is that consistent overbearing on the brain, releasing cortisol, 24/7 and not knowing how to shut our minds off. And then that just like struggles that sympathetic system, which then tailspins our whole body. So talk a little bit about, um, the hormones with cortisol and how that affects other hormones in the body.
Sure. The well-known ones are that people are mostly aware of as cortisol and insulin. They dance together, You get the distress, cortisol becomes elevated, and then it raises blood sugar. And when your body sees elevated blood sugar, it's going to make insulin. And both cortisol and insulin will make you store the energy that you did not burn off. And let's face it, most of us are sitting in front of computers all day. We're much more sedentary than we had been. That energy is not burning off. So what does it happen? Gets stored as fat
Mm.
and usually not in the places we enjoy, right? Not the places we want it. It's usually around the belly and the internal organs. So, you know, I say cortisol and insulin are like alcohol to an alcoholic. The more you have, the more you need, and then you get resistance to it. So insulin resistance causes quite a number of things, polycystic ovarian syndrome. It causes metabolic syndrome. It causes, weight gain. And when it gets interrupted, it disrupts a lot of the other hormones, and so does cortisol. When cortisol is high, it will lower, what I'm known for: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid, all the feel good hormones that keep you energetic and young and zippy and sharp. So cortisol, and if it continues to be high, people come back with this: I have adrenal fatigue. Well, your adrenals don't fatigue. Your adrenals listen to whatever your brain tells it, right? Cortisol releasing hormone to ACTH. Well, what happens is, like, if you heard a nagging voice, you tune it out, right? So your brain gets tired. Your brain is like, I can't hear this anymore. So it
Yeah.
just shuts off the signal, and the adrenal glands is like, well, nobody's telling me to make any hormones, so I'm not going to. Cortisol tanks, and that's where you get the fibromyalgia, the chronic fatigue, the, increased infections, the autoimmune disorders, and God forbid if you get cancer, you get a worse prognosis. And people, whether cortisol's too high or too low, you can't sleep, you have a lot of aches and pains, and it will dysregulate blood sugar. So, the dysregulation of blood sugar affects so many things.
Mm.
And what I tell people is that, they ask me, like, why am I waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning? Well, it's probably blood sugar or cortisol, right? Because even if you think you're not stressed, our brains are like programs running in the background. Those apps on your computer, they're still taking energy whether you're actively using them or not.
Mm.
And sleep wake cycles, feeding and intake cycles all affect a lot of hormones. And, while I am known for dealing with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, perimenopause, menopause, andropause, PMS, you cannot neglect these other things, because the people that come to me, they're tired, they're achy, they have weight gain in the middle, they can't sleep, they have brain fog, they're moody, and they like, what do you do with that? Well, you regulate your blood sugar, you regulate your cortisol, and then there are the other hormones that regulate appetite And all of these hormones are tied to circadian rhythm,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
sleep, that's why I tell people, I could just give you hormones and that's not going to change anything. Because
Okay.
if you're a night owl and you're on your computer all night and you're going to bed with this problem in the background and you're subjected to blue light, which turns off your melatonin, and then you had something to eat late at night, your blood sugar is going to go up when you don't want it to. Then it's going to crash in the middle of the night when you don't want it to. And that's going to create a surge of cortisol when you don't want it to. And all those rhythms, all those clocks get disrupted. So
Mhm.
I cannot stress enough the importance of living with the rhythms, the day night rhythms. Get up in the morning, get some light, get some movement, have your biggest meal during the day. And at night, wind down, block your blue light. Don't eat late because the thing that's going to affect your sleep the most is light and food intake at night.
Mhm.
So have your dinner, hopefully 3 hours before you're going to go to sleep, so that you don't get these blood sugar swings in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and being aware of these blood sugar swings is so important. I know one of the things that I often talk about and with my patients and individuals online is requesting to wear a continuous glucose monitor.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
they're right on, they're on point. They're going to show you the information. Dr. Maeda and I can talk about it all day long, but until you really start to see visually, especially if you're a visual person, and like she mentions the circadian rhythm, your cortisol spikes or your blood sugar drops at night and wakes you up in the middle of the night or whatever that is. It's like we have these tools that we can use for short term to understand our body. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like you're saying, if we don't get our nutrition in check, which is the foundation of our body, you could prescribe hormones, which is what your gift is and what you love to do with the aging at the Feel Good Again Institute. It's like, but if we don't have that cortisol in check, right?
Right. And I tell people, your hormones control you, but you control your hormones. What
Right.
you eat, what you drink, how much you sleep, how much you exercise, the stress you're under, the toxins you're exposed to, all affect your hormones. And you're in control of some of those things. So we want to keep them in balance. And interestingly enough, it's all the same thing. And I use the acronym STAMES. Manage stress, S. T, toxins, decrease your toxin load because the toxins incite your immune system. They mimic hormones, so they're going to hijack your hormone system, and they also act on the nervous system. And we could get into the whole microbiome in the gut, and that's a whole nother talk. But that will change your hormones, change your microbiome. What you eat changes your microbiome, and that's bigger than your brain. There are more cells in your gut than there are in your body, and they can hijack your system. So stress, toxins, adverse food reactions, or allergens or antigens. And antigens can be anything foreign. Listen, we've had the wildfires from Canada come down here, and the air was thick and orange, and you're breathing in those toxins, and those ones we could see, but
Yeah.
we're breathing in stuff that's dirty. We're eating stuff that's dirty. We're putting stuff on our skin that's dirty, and they're all chemicals that our body is like, what do I do with this? So it
Right.
causes inflammation, and inflammation are the signals. Your hormones are signaling molecules, and they're at least over 50. So,
Mm.
and they all interact with each other. Just think about it like Congress. You have those that are left leaning, those that are right leaning, those that push your metabolism in the right direction, those that halt it. They're supposed to be a balance, and it doesn't always work. You throw something in there, it's going to mess up your system, right? So, we I usually have people do a very short elimination diet to have anti-inflammatory foods remove inflammatory foods for 2 weeks and then reintroduce to see how they feel. And it's transformative. Um, So then we look at inflammation and infection, and there are a lot of hidden infections, especially in the gut. And
Mhm.
inflammation is the root cause of all illness. And you know what causes inflammation? All of the things I mentioned:
Mhm.
stress, toxins, adverse food reactions, allergies, antigens, nutritional excess, nutritional deficiencies. And then last but not least is sleep, solitude, sedentary lifestyle. I mean, we learned during the pandemic, solitude was not a good thing. Loneliness is as dangerous as smoking. Sedentary lifestyle, that it's bad for all of us. And exercise can be treatment for many of the metabolic disorders that we experience, and for blood sugar, and for hormones, and for blood pressure, cholesterol, weight. So exercise is really important. And, sleep, we discussed a little bit the circadian rhythm. And all of these hormones that I'm going to mention, cortisol, insulin, ghrelin, leptin, melatonin, they all have their rhythm. Some are high in the morning and go low at night, and some are low in the morning and high at night. And if they get off sync, you're off sync.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, being aware of your body and being connected to it. Like when you mentioned being off sync, like someone might say, well, what do you mean off sync? You know what I mean? Like we're taught to be so disconnected from our body. But really, like, the more connected to who you are as an individual, to me, when I work with my patients, like, they live in their body. I'm listening
That's
to what they're
right.
sharing, and then we're guiding these clients or patients or when we're coaching or whatnot, and we're taking them down the journey to actually help them do all the pieces that you just talked about. Like, I always say there's not one treatment plan for everybody. Like we're always constantly changing like how you're working with your hormones, like what that looks like. Can you talk about a little bit of ghrelin and leptin because I don't think people really understand that connection.
Ghrelin, think of your stomach growling. It's what the signal that you're hungry. Now, if ghrelin is off, you're always hungry, right?
Mhm.
When you're overweight, the ghrelin is going to be louder, it's going to be higher, and it's going to be more prolonged. And it should be high in the morning because you got to, you fasted all night, theoretically. Some people do raid the refrigerator at night, but it's higher in the morning, it goes lower at night. And if that is off because of being overweight, you're going to always be hungry and craving foods, and you're going to always crave the wrong foods. So the way to treat that is to do high intensity interval training. Like after you exercise, sometimes it just depresses your appetite when you do something heavy aerobic. So that will bring ghrelin in check, and having more protein, because carbs are as addictive as cocaine. So we're talking about these hormones and hormone resistance. The more you have, the less effective they are, and the more they wreak havoc because they're hanging around giving signals that the body's not listening because it's so inflamed that they go higher and higher. So ghrelin can be kept in check by having more protein, high intensity interval training. And again, you want to eat more in the morning and less at night. And it dances with leptin. Leptin is like, okay, I ate, I'm satisfied. So leptin resistance is a big cause of obesity. And, when you overeat, it decreases the sensitivity. And it is known as a biomarker of stress. So when you're stressed, what do? You eat. And what do you eat? You eat comfort foods.
Yes.
So that's not good for your leptin. Your leptin is like, I want more of that. Those carbs are as addictive as cocaine. I want more. I want more. I want more. So big food knows exactly why you can't eat just one. That old commercial, you can't eat just one. You can. Some people go to the fridge and they're like, I don't know how I ate that pint of ice cream or that bag of chips that's supposed to be 4 servings. I ate the whole thing. It's the addictive potential of what's in the food. I mean, they know, big food knows how to process foods. So you want more, you crave more. And when you're stressed, that's what you're going to go for. So really, if your leptin is off and you'll get leptin resistance, you are never satisfied. So
Mhm.
you always want more and more, and the stress doesn't go away. If you don't deal with it, it doesn't go away. You're going to overeat, and you're going to eat inflammatory foods. And those are usually the foods that you become sensitive to that cause inflammation. So it's
Mm.
usually the simple carbs, the grains, sugar, soy, gluten, alcohol,
Mhm.
caffeine. So when you're obese or you start gaining weight, you get resistance.
Yeah, so good. And I want to just backtrack for a second so listeners really hear this, because I say this all the time as well. Dr. Maeda said, inflammation is the cause of all disease. Like, I want you guys to really hear that and hear all the pieces that she's talking about, because that's the ground. If we're putting foods in our body, or our digestion is off and our hormones are off, and we're causing this consistent inflammation, whether it's from foods that don't work well with our body, we have allergens, they're toxic, they're endocrine disruptors, that is all causing inflammation. And that consistent, even like your relationships and your emotions can cause inflammation, like you were mentioning. And
Yeah.
that's so key. And then the biggest site of inflammation is too much sugar.
Yeah. Sugar is it's a very big deal, and it also feeds cancer, and it is the probably one of the most inflammatory foods. And people don't realize that simple carbs, just think of a pearl necklace. Each pearl is sugar, and a long string of pearls or a short string of pearls is a simple carbohydrate.
Yeah.
So when you put it in your mouth, amylase is in your saliva, it cuts the pearl. So what you're getting, you're not getting that simple carbohydrate. You're getting all those beads of sugar.
Yeah.
And when you get a sugar bomb, I'd say it's like Black Friday at Walmart. A normal day at Walmart, you go in, you get processed, you come out, right? No big deal. There's no crowd in the parking lot or riots going on. Well, Black Friday, and now with online, you don't have that as much anymore, but there are only so many doors. So sugar can't get into the cells to be burned. It's hanging around. It's like, what do I do? What does it do? It binds to protein throughout your body. An
Mhm.
easy way to look at cortisol of this is called glycation, sugar binding to protein. When you notice cataracts, that's the sugar binding to the protein in your eye. That's something visual that you can look at. And that happens slowly over time. In diabetics, it happens faster. But just because it's happening in your eyes, it means it's happening everywhere. It's happening in your brain. It's happening in your nerve cells. It's happening in your kidneys. It's happening in your skin. It's happening in your arteries. It's happening in your heart. It's everywhere. And an easy marker for that is hemoglobin A1C. That is inside the red blood cells, and that it lasts the lifetime of a red blood cell. So if your hemoglobin A1C is high, that means you've had some sugar bombs, and that is a big cause of inflammation, because glycation causes oxidation. That's wrinkling and rust, and that ages you. And then both of those feed off each other, and then they cause inflammation, the root cause of most illness. And all of that together causes hormones, the good hormones to decline, the bad hormones to not work, to take over, and the hormones that you need to start signaling, they get resistant. Nobody's listening anymore. That inflammation's like being in a smoke-filled room. When you're coughing and you're trying to talk to somebody across the room and they're coughing, there is no communication anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Such a great description. I love that. And, really, the truth is getting off sugar is anti-aging. But yet we want all these anti-aging pieces, but everything that you just spoke about, of course,
Yeah.
but like get rid of the sugar. That's like one big key. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
then really briefly before we close, because I just want you to talk about it because it is really your gift. how does, if somebody's having this whole imbalance that you talked about with like so much sugar and high cortisol and throwing off all the circadian rhythms, how does that actually affect your hormones that you work with, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone? Like, just give us a brief overview because I just want to hear that from you because that's what you love to talk about.
Yeah. Well, it's a seesaw, and I see it all the time. When cortisol is too high or too low, it's going to depress the others because people don't realize that cholesterol turns into pregnenolone, turns into progesterone, and from progesterone, it can take different pathways. It could go to cortisol, it can go to DHEA, it can go to, and DHEA turns to testosterone, testosterone turns to estrogen. But the minute you get that inflammation and that cortisol surge, it's there is no cortisol steal either, but we use your body is either in fight or flight, or rest, digest, rejuvenate, repair, reproduce. You cannot be in both states at the same time. So if you're you have distress, physical, emotional, chemical, cortisol is going to react to that. And that takes charge because that's fine. Your body has an alarm signal.
Mhm.
So when your body has an alarm signal to fight or flight, it is not going to rest, rejuvenate, repair, digest, reproduce. So you're going to lower those sex hormones and the hormones that build you up, and also thyroid.
Yeah.
So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid in a distress situation, they're going to go down. So
Yeah.
that's why when I work with patients, the first thing I do is I measure the cortisol. I remove foods that cause inflammation just for 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be forever. I give things that help people like fish oil and, antioxidants, and, add more fruits and vegetables, give them good nutrition because cortisol is going to suck up your B vitamins, your C, your magnesium. And then after you calm the system down, we do this while we're waiting for the labs. Then the labs come back and, lo and behold, a lot of the imbalances corrected. Because I do have people who come to me and say, I don't want hormones. And when I go through this process, they feel better. Their hormones are in better balance. And then, maybe when the estrogen tanks or they get off balance, they may come back again for, some actual hormone replacement. But I've seen it in men and in women. When the cortisol's up, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are down. You get the cortisol down, the other comes up. They feel better, you reduce inflammation, they get slim, sharp, sexy, and supercharged, right?
Exactly.
It's a beautiful thing, and I want people to come away with small changes can make a big difference.
Yeah. So good. So good. And
Yeah.
work with like one or two changes at a time. Like people want to work at everything all at once, and it's like you wouldn't go into your pantry. Well, some patients would, I guess, go into their pantry and throw everything away. But if you, like Dr. Maeda was saying, like a couple weeks or a month of detoxing, taking away the foods that are offending you, and then slowly rebuild. I even do that with gut and hormonal health. Like if somebody's completely depleted in front of me, I'm not going to go in and kill an infection. I'm going to build that foundation
Yeah.
up, get the cortisol down, get you in a place where you're digesting well. Like this isn't a gut seminar, I've done it before, but like she said, your gut is so important. And
Yeah.
what you eat feeds your gut, and many of your hormones are in your gut. And it just is this, the whole body works together, and it's just such a beautiful hormone balance.
Yeah, you can't just isolate one thing because I do have people say, just give me hormones now. And when you're depleted and I have a lot of people that say I do everything right and et cetera, et cetera. And they are depleted and they've just gone a little too far. Yes, I give hormones. Of course, I give hormones. It's life changing when women tell me, I can't sleep, I'm gaining weight, I have brain fog, I'm tired, I'm irritable, it's damaging my relationships, I feel bad about myself, I don't feel like myself anymore. You see their hormones are tanked, or, some in perimenopause, you have high estrogen and no progesterone, and that makes you anxious, irritable, can't sleep, overweight, bleeding, gaining weight, holding fluid. you get a lot of the same symptoms of menopause, and perimenopause can last for about 10 years before menopause. And then you shift over into menopause. Sometimes the symptoms get worse and they get a little bit different. Then when you get dry, you get forgetful, you get depressed, you still have anxiety and depression. And you know what? There's nothing like the real thing. I mean, when I see somebody suffering like that, we prep the body for the hormones, make sure you're eliminating by moving your bowels, that your gallbladder is working, that you've got a good microbiome. And it's miraculous. Women tell me, I feel like myself again. I got my life back. And it's a beautiful thing. It's what keeps me going. It's what makes me happy. I suffered terribly in perimenopause, terribly. And, it was so bad. I had family issues. I left my job and I had like one of the best jobs on the planet, right? But I said, I had to choose between my family or my job. And, I chose my family. And, my best friend said, your personality changed. And it did. And I just felt so snappy and irritable. And I'll tell you, when I took some, when I finally, I treated so many women, I just said, oh my God, this is, this is perimenopause. I took some progesterone and it was night and day. The clouds parted, the sun came out. I
Mm.
had the same stressors, but I dealt with them differently. I felt good. I felt calm, in control. I was able to sleep. I lost the weight. I repaired most friendships. But when you're irritable, things come out the wrong way, or you say the right words, but the tone is
Yeah.
holding back that irritation. And the irritation is not necessarily at them, it's just your own body. You feel out of control. So we gotta take back the reins and take control, because these little things, they're not that little.
Mm.
It'll change your life, and that's why I make sure everybody has sort of a multivitamin mineral formula to cover all bases, some fish oil, K2D3, get some sleep. Obviously, I change things based on the person, but
Really.
these are, like, I call them their insurance policies, right? They're there to hold you, to make up for the deficiencies in our diets and the fact that stress or distress is robbing our body of essential nutrients.
Yeah, and when you sell those supplements as well with nutrition, like the protein is key. So many people are not eating enough protein. I mean, I had a young girl in my clinic that I've been treating for a long time, and finally she's like, I just heard you one day and I just kept eating all this protein and I just was like, my menses were better. She was really young. She's 28. She's like, my menses are better. I didn't have all the cramping. I didn't have all the irritability. And it's like you need protein for your body, and that's not, talked about enough either. And you need it for the hormones.
Yeah, so for insulin, it's low carb. For ghrelin, it's higher protein. So if you lower your carbs and increase your protein, you get a better balance there. And
Yeah.
for leptin, it's decreasing the inflammatory foods, sugar, grains, wheat, gluten, soy, those types of things, and getting a balance of high intensity interval training, which helps with ghrelin. But for insulin, you need muscle. Muscle
Mm.
burns calories. Muscle eats up that sugar.
Yeah.
So it gets burned and it doesn't bind to your proteins throughout the body. So resistance training is good. And that's why I've always recommend doing both. You
Yeah.
should do resistance training at least 2 times a week, sometimes three. When you're older, you need a little bit more recovery period. And the high intensity interval training, you do it in between the resistance training. And, I know I can maintain my weight when I usually try to exercise a small amount in the morning and then later in the day. But I know sometimes I don't get to it later in the day. So at least I know I've covered myself in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't do the really high intensity that I used to do. I'm much older now, but it helps maintain my weight, my mood, my energy, my mental clarity. Exercise increases brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is keeps your brain young. It keeps those connections going. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and with all the dementia in this arena, like you want to do anything that you can to keep that circulation in your brain and all the pieces that we talked about here. I just really want to thank you for the work that you're doing because I think like we started when we first were talking, like hormones are just not talked enough about. And when we think of hormones, we're just thinking of the main pieces, which those are important, the progesterone, the testosterone, the estrogen, DHEA. But, really the stress and the cortisol and the sugars and things aren't connected. So thank you for taking it in that direction for people to understand. But also, I just want people to realize what you love to do is, the hormonal piece. And so that is key. And with that being said, you were so grateful to offer our audience. It's called Hormone Harmonized Kickstart. Could you tell us a little bit about that and make sure that you go and download it on, it'll be on your dashboard for you to download.
Yeah, this is helping you. We talked about how hormones impact your life and how hormones control you and you control your hormones. So you're going to get a deeper understanding and how things are connected, how toxins, your gut and your diet make a big difference in your hormones. And also there's so many myths about hormones. So you're going to get actionable strategies, how to make those small changes that make a big difference. I'm going to bust the myths for you about hormone replacement therapy because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And plus I shared with you some of my favorite recipes. I make them all myself and I love to eat. I love to cook and I'm a foodie, So you'll have, an understanding, actionable strategies, and some great recipes.
So good. And make sure everyone, please download these. These speakers have put them together for you because their heart is in there and connect with them. And this way, especially if you're interested in doing hormones, it will give you arena of like debunking the myths. And actually, everybody needs some great recipes. And I'm sure it sounds like they're probably related to hormones as well, right? So I just, again, thank you for the work that you're doing in the world and thank you for showing up and speaking to all of us at Health Mastery for Leaders. We get up every day and we get to lead our life. And if we lead our life in a more healthy way, our health is our biggest asset on so many levels. So thank you, Dr. Maeda, and I appreciate you. And it was just such a great time to like connect and hear your energy and hear your voice and the change that you're doing in the world all around hormones.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I just hope it makes a difference in someone's life.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for listening.